people, even though they like them. So, again, the problem is unbelievable. The unintended consequences are unbelievable.
Would the gentleman
Unfortunately, you better believe it because they happen. And I yield back to my friend.
Would you touch a moment, Dr. Gingrey, about the fact that while we're trying to expand coverage and all those things, that there'll actually be people that will be pushed off of coverage of health care they have today? Would you be, such as by their employers, would you expound upon that?
And I thank the gentleman for pointing that out, because the law very specifically says that if you employ 50 or more people, then you are going to be required by the federal government to provide for them a health insurance policy, and again, not just any health insurance coverage, but the one that the federal government, that UNCLE demands that you provide. So many of these employers, particularly small business men and women, and by the way, we will be voting on a bill, Mr. Speaker, on Thursday on this House floor, we, the Republican majority, a bill introduced by the House Majority Leader, Eric Cannon, the gentleman from Virginia, to cut by 20% the taxes on those businesses, small businesses. 30% of them probably, in fact, are owned and operated by women. And to give them the opportunity to hire people and stimulate the economy. That, in a way, is another subject, but in a way it's actually the same subject, is it not? I yield back to my friend.
Well, I would like to yield you to yield for a question, and that is, if one of these small businesses, you say that the threshold is 50 employees, and they lose certain subsidies or certainly face more penalties or costs after 50, what is the chance that a small business that has 49 employees will dare hire another employee?
Well, that's, and I thank the gentleman for yielding back. That is exactly the point. They won't. They won't. They will figure out a way, if they've got 49 employees and they really need 53, they'll probably hire 8 more, or whatever the math is, as half-time people with no benefits, because they can't afford to cover their health insurance. I mean, it is a job destroyer. It's not a job creator. And then the other situation, of course, is for those that employ significantly more than 50. I mean, you know, maybe they've got 1,000 employees. Mr. Speaker, these companies are going to look at the cost, the mandated cost of coverage under Obamacare, and they're going to say, you know what, our bottom line will be a lot better if we just pay the darn fine, which I think is about $2,000 per year per employee that doesn't have health insurance coverage provided by them. And if they do provide the coverage under Obamacare, as Dr. Fleming points out, Mr. Speaker, today that would be $12,000 a year probably for a family policy. But 10 years from now, it could be $18,000 a year. And the only person that, or groups that are held harmless from that and the taxation of these so-called Cadillac plans, guess who? The unions, organized labor. So all good points that people need to understand, the unintended consequences of the federal government trying to meddle in the marketplace and treat health care, 1/6 of the economy, just like it's any other business. And you can't do that. And the American people know it and they hate it. And I yield back to my friend.
Yeah. Well, I think the gentleman, great points again. Estimates are as high as 20 million Americans who are on insurance today through their employers, happy and satisfied with the coverage they have, will be pushed off. Why? Because the employer, the business, will find it at least financially reasonable and perhaps beneficial to just pay the fine, push the employees out into the marketplace, make them go into the exchanges, and force them to have to deal with the realities of Obamacare. Now, I know that people hearing me say this would say, well, that's cold-hearted. If you really love your employees, and I have a small business, and we employ considerably more than 50 employees, and I love my employees, and I want them to have the best possible coverage. But look, if I have a competitor out there who can lower his cost by pushing his employees out and paying a penalty, and then I go and do the right thing and pay that, well, then he's going to be able to sell his product at a lower price than me. That puts me out of business. And now not only do my employees not have health insurance, they don't have a job. And again, back to this 50 threshold, anytime you have a law in the United States that penalizes an employer for hiring above a certain level, that is a terrible law by itself, disincentivizing an employer to say, well, I'm not going to grow my business. If I can't grow it by leaps and bounds and take tremendous risk and in the process bring in so much money to cover that incremental cost of health care, I'm not even going to try it. In fact, I may just close my business down altogether. Well, in the remaining moments we have, and I'll be happy to give Dr. Gingrey even further time to add some additional comments, but I just wanted to again go back to this broken promise that was mentioned before both by Dr. Gingrey and myself. I will protect Medicare. President Barack Obama, September 2009, he promised he would protect Medicare. And where are we today? The Republicans, through the Ryan plan, a very good plan, a very good budget, we have a solution that will make Medicare sustainable for an indefinite period of time. The Democrats in the House say, no, we're not in for that. We're not in for anything. We have no ideas. And I will remind folks in this body that the actuaries, the CBO, all of the authorities tell us that Medicare runs out of money, becomes insolvent, it becomes bankrupt in 4 to 8 years. So it's time somebody comes up with a plan. We have a plan. We had one this year. We had one last year. We modified it a little bit to make it one that I think Democrats could accept, and they still have not signed on to it, although we have one Democrat in the Senate who has, so it is bipartisan. But the President made the promise, and the Republicans in the House are trying to keep it, and Democrats will not go along with that. Again, to recap, Obamacare cuts as much as $575 billion from the Medicare program, $200 billion from Medicare Advantage, which is a private form of Medicare that many Americans enjoy and love. It forces over 7 million seniors out of their current Medicare plan. 15% of hospitals, nursing homes, and home health will close because of Medicare paying less under Obamacare. Again, you can't cut out over $500 billion without cutting out reimbursements for something, and that's where it's going to be. It's going to be hospitals, nursing homes, home health agencies, and many other types of services that Medicare provides. The CBO estimates that Medicare prescription drug coverage premiums will increase by 9% as a result of Obamacare. So again, Mr. Speaker, this is not a tax, it's not an expense just on the wealthy. It hits the middle class and the poor as well. And finally, the CMS actuary projects the Medicare program could be bankrupt, as I mentioned before, as early as 2016. Medicare costs are projected to grow substantially from approximately 3.6% of the size of our economy, GDP, in 2010 to 5.5% by 2035, and that's the Medicare trustees. The physician payment formula in Medicare needs to be fixed or seniors may lose their doctors. Costs $316 billion. We're hearing all over America physicians who are beginning to back away from seeing Medicare patients, not because they don't want to, not because they're not willing to sacrifice, but because if they do, they go out of business and they can't make it. And then already access is an issue because of money problems. 12% of physicians stop seeing Medicare patients due to the broken physician formula that we have and that cannot be resolved, and our friends on the other side refuse to address. So in our closing moments, I'd be happy to yield to the gentleman if he has any comments.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague. I did want to make one other point, and actually our colleague on the other side of the Capitol in the Senate, Senator Tom Coburn, OBGYN family practitioner, great physician from Oklahoma. I hate it that he's retiring at the end of this term, but has been a fantastic contributor to this debate. And he has pointed out recently, Mr. Speaker, if people think that once the Medicare, the Hospital Insurance Trust Fund becomes insolvent, whether it's 2016 or 2020 or 2024 at the latest, at the very latest, that doctors cannot be paid on their Medicare claims, their hospital part of Medicare, even if the federal government wanted to honor those claims because the trust fund is insolvent and pay those claims out of the general treasury. As Dr. Coburn correctly points out, they cannot do it. And yet we are whistling past the graveyard, fiddling away while Rome is burning. That's what we're getting out of this administration. And I yield back to my friend.
Well, I think the gentleman, that's very important. Because what I'm understanding you saying is that if the trust fund becomes insolvent and there are checks going out to physicians across America, we can't just connect a line over to the general budget and say, oh, we're going to cover the bills. No, they don't get paid. Checks will bounce. And so this is a problem that must be solved. So to recap in the final moments that we have, and I want to thank my good friend Dr. Gingrey for joining me this evening. We really have a strong group of physicians and nurses, other health care workers in the GOP Doctors Caucus. We hope to be joined by some more next year, as a matter of fact. We feel like the physicians are a strong force in the U.S. Congress, not just because they know and understand the health care economy, which is very unique, but also because physicians are unique in this way. We want to make a diagnosis, and we want to treat, and we want to cure. We're not about kicking the can down the road. We want to cure the disease or solve the problem and move to the next one. And so the more physicians we have, I think we will. But again, I just want to reiterate for my colleagues and Mr. Speaker, that just because you have a card that says you are entitled to care in the United States does not mean you have access to it. I want to reiterate that. Just because you have a card, just because you have coverage, does not mean that the doors will open for you. And this is where our colleagues, I think, are misguided on the other side. Obamacare is all about giving coverage, all about giving cards to people, but it does not protect their access to care. Because, in fact, under their system, which is basically based on a socialized model, the only way that the government will be able to afford it, and taxpayers in general, will be to create long lines, create shortages, and say no, to be traffic cops to people. And you know what? The parts of our health care system today that is government-run, already before Obamacare, we're already seeing spot shortages, chemotherapeutic agents, injectable drugs that are otherwise not expensive, but because of the quirks of this socialized, government-run, highly bureaucratic system, we're finding that the manufacturers can't make them because they don't get enough reimbursement to cover their cost. So what happens is they slow down or stop making them altogether, and we have diseases and cancers out there today where physicians are scrounging around looking for the correct chemotherapeutic agent which would cure their disease, and it's very inexpensive and been around for many years, and we have to even look to other countries to supply that. So with that, I look forward to our next GOP Doctors Caucus. I always enjoy this. I hope that those in this chamber who listen to this find it at least somewhat informative. With that, and I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gohmert, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Interesting times we live in, and I've appreciated my friends, my doctor friends. Want Well, we've got two physicians who would certainly like to help heal America, but we have people in powerful positions in the Senate as well as the White House that don't appear to be interested in their prescriptions. I sure am, and I appreciate their observations. Also, they alluded to some of the energy issues before us in the country right now, and that's certainly worth noting. First, I want to address something that we're hearing that the President, over and over and over, he's spending millions and millions of tax dollars running around the country telling people that the cure to what ails us and the cure to all unfairness is the Buffett rule. And we're told that since Warren Buffett may pay a lower percentage than his secretary, Warren Buffett and the President are saying we need to tax the wealthy more. And we found out the President pays apparently a lower tax rate than his secretary, 20% compared to a higher percentage that his secretary pays. And it leaves some of us baffled. If somebody really feels that it's fairness or a moral issue for Warren Buffett and the President to pay more taxes than their secretaries, then at least have the morality to do it. Don't come to Congress and say, we demand you pass laws to force us to do the morally right thing, because we're not going to do the morally right thing unless Congress passes a law making me, Warren Buffett, me, President Obama, do the right thing. We can't control ourselves and make ourselves do the morally proper thing, the fair thing, unless Congress passes a law. Really? Is that what we've come to? That the leader of the free world, just down Pennsylvania Avenue, has to have Congress pass a law to get him to do what he says is the moral and fair thing to do? Come on. Are we in that bad a shape now? I've had one of the smarter economists in the country, Art Laffer, Ronald Reagan's economic advisor. What a great guy. Serves good spaghetti and meatballs at his home in Nashville. I've personally gotten to try out. Wonderful family, delightful family, brilliant economist. I've had him explain to me how anybody who says we're going after the rich, we're going to go after the rich and we're going to make them pay their fair share, probably not being honest. They're just probably not being honest, because if they think through their proposal, if they will look at current history, if they will look at immediate past history and long past history, what they find is this. If you're a union worker, if you're a mechanic, if you're working on an oil well somewhere, if you are working as a waitress, you're working in a restaurant, you're working in a pharmacy, you're working in any of millions of businesses across America, and you're not rich, you're part of the working middle class, you cannot move if you get taxed a higher amount, because you are reliant on that job. So taxes, no matter what kind of tax you put in place, it's most likely only going to affect those who are in the middle class, no matter what else you do, because only the wealthy are not tied to a restaurant, to a car company, to an auto manufacturer, to an auto repair place. They're not tied to those. They can own them and they can live in the next state or the next country, but they don't have to actually live at the place of business they're making money from. So when you go after the wealthiest in America and want to make them do the morally fair thing because without Congress passing a law, these wealthiest among us can't make themselves do the moral and fair thing according to their own words. Gee, we can't do it unless Congress makes us. What you do is tell the wealthy, we're going to slap a big old tax on you, and the wealthy can say, no thank you. I look stupid perhaps, but I'm not that stupid. That's how I've either gained or been able to hold on to my wealth. So I'm moving. I'm voting on where I want to live with my feet. And they pick up and they go to where there's less taxes. We've seen it in the wealthiest moving from country to another country or island or buying an island. We've seen that repeatedly. And if the government says, well, gee, we'll outsmart the wealthiest among us, they move to another country, so we'll figure out a new way to go after the wealthiest. And every time it fails to work. So after a while you get the idea, wait, let's look historically. Every time a city, state, or nation goes after the wealthiest people in the world to make them pay higher taxes, unless the whole world collaborated at the same time to make it happen, they will simply move. The middle class cannot do that. The middle class does not have that luxury. If you're very wealthy and gas goes to $4 or $5 a gallon, it's an inconvenience. And you can't be tied up with trivial details like gas going up $1 a gallon or $2 a gallon, or like it has under this president, go from $1.80 or so up to $4, and now we're heading toward $5, and in some places I have seen $5, certainly over $5 for some time this year in some of the premium gasoline lines. So the wealthiest, they're not really bothered. It's an inconvenience. They can choose to live in an estate out in the country. They can choose to live in a townhome worth millions at the top of a building in the middle of town. Or they can choose to live on an island. They can choose to live anywhere. And because of the internet, the telephone, internet meetings, the wealthiest among us can do their business from anywhere. So it becomes very clear that the only reason somebody really intelligent that understands what's going on and is willing to look at the historical precedent, anybody that's really going to be fair will realize the only reason they would say we're going after the wealthiest among us is for political gain. Because they're going to drive them out of the country otherwise, or drive them out of the state or city where the taxes are going to be raised dramatically. The thing to do that's fair for those of us who want those making more money to pay more and those who are making less money to pay less, those of us that feel that way have, many of us, begun to say, you know, to do that, let's have a flat tax. Some, like Steve Forbes, have been saying it for a long time. The Heritage Foundation has got a new flat tax proposal that looks to have wonderful merit. There are a number of flat tax proposals. Steve Forbes was at 17% flat tax, doesn't matter how much you make. My conversations with Art Laffer, he said you could have a flat tax and actually even be lower than 17%. I'm looking forward to getting the full details, and have two deductions, one for home mortgage interest and one for charitable contributions, and I'm not talking about when you give underwear to some charity and say, congratulations, you now got my undergarments. I'm talking about, you know, real charitable contributions. Make those things deductible, but otherwise eliminate all the loopholes. Whether it's 12, 17, the economy would explode. There would be more jobs available. And at this time when there are so many that are just on the edge of desperation, when they don't know what they're going to do, they can't keep paying $4 a gallon for gas. For those who have been looking so long, the millions that are out of work because they've just gotten tired of looking. So they're not counted in the unemployment numbers. So we realize, gee, the unemployment is probably much, much, much worse than the administration is telling folks. For those folks, I'd like to provide a little hope. It won't be under this administration, but if we have a different president and we get a different majority in the Senate, it truly ought to be springtime in America, figuratively as it is literally right now. We now know, many of us, we could be energy independent. 7 years ago when I got to Congress, I didn't think so. The natural gas we found is extraordinary. And how have we done it? The technology has gotten so good at slanting holes. The technology has gotten so good in sealing the hole and fracking a formation. And for those that understand how it works, if you do not have a sealed formation there and you frack, then you've lost the formation. There will be no pressure to bring the oil or gas up. We've also had hearings in natural resources, and Chairman Doc Hastings has done a great job there. We've had hearings and we've discussed a lot of these things. And we have some chicken littles in the Interior Department, Energy Department, and the EPA running around saying, gee, hydraulic fracking keeps polluting drinking water. They've shut wells down. And each time when they brought in the scientific study to actually analyze, because there have been some drinking water that's been polluted by something, but when they analyze, they find there is not anything that was utilized in the hydraulic fracking process that was able to make its way through the thousands of feet of rock formations to get to the drinking water, and that there is nothing in the polluted drinking water that could possibly have come from the fracking. Yet this president keeps saying, I'm for all of the above. And the best I can figure is when he says I'm for all of the above energy process, it means I'm for anything we don't get out of the ground. So we'll give hundreds of millions, actually billions of dollars to dear friends who have bundled money for the president's re-election and original election. And we'll give them those billions of dollars and say, go try to make solar panels, even though it's not financially feasible. It's not a viable enterprise. Go do it, and I will help you by giving billions of dollars, 42% of which we're having to borrow. We'll give them all that money. You know, someday we should be able to use solar energy. But for heaven's sake, we should not be depriving our Social Security funds of money while this president is giving away billions of dollars to cronies for energy ideas that don't work and that are not feasible and that are bankrupting America. And yet that's what's been happening. 2% payroll tax cut for workers. to divide Americans. Seniors have been told, you know what, you don't have to worry. This Democratic administration is going to make sure we take care of our seniors, and the very times that's being said, they are gutting the Social Security Trust Fund, even though it's IOUs going in there. There's Social Security tax money that has been coming in since the 1930s in enough sufficiency to pay for the outgoing checks. It was not supposed to be for many years that we were supposed to reach that point where there was more Social Security money going out than Social Security tax money coming in. Well, this president doubled down, and in what is a divisive, or I guess use his terminology, divisive, dismissive gesture from this administration, we have undercut our seniors. This administration has been pushing to gut the Social Security Trust Fund, and it has done so. Now, the friends of the mainstream media, trying to cover for the president, they're not talking about the fact that last year there was 5% of Social Security payments that we didn't have money to pay from the Social Security Trust Fund payments coming in. So we had to borrow around 42% of the rest, and we had to take tax money to make up the rest. And there's projections that though it was a 5% shortfall last year, it will likely be 14 or 15% this year. That's not a good road to stay on. It is a road to Greece. It is a road that will so undercut our senior citizens who deserve better from every administration, including this one. Seniors have been hurt by this administration. 5% last year, 15% this year, and if we don't get a different administration and a different majority in the Senate, it's going to be worse after that. Could it be 45% the next year? If it triples in 1 year, could it triple again? We're in trouble if we continue the policies of this administration. Now, the EPA apparently today, since hydraulic fracking has brought us somewhere 100 to 300 years of natural gas, even at vastly expanded rates of usage, we could be energy independent. We could put not merely city buses on natural gas, but move cars to natural gas. At the same time, the Bakken play up in North Dakota has found a huge amount of oil we didn't realize we had. In northeast Utah, northwest Colorado, southwest Wyoming, we're told there's tremendous amounts of energy. We're told there's clean coal technology. And what's the answer of this administration? Let's shut down any use of coal. Why? Because this administration has all of the above as their energy policy, which means they're not going to use coal because it comes from underground. We in the United States have been blessed beyond measure. We have more natural resources, more energy than any nation in the world. China, Russia, you name it. We've got more natural energy than anywhere. And this administration has continued to put our energy off limits. Second largest coal deposit in the world, in Utah, we're told, was put off limits by President Clinton. This administration, you know, of all the campaign promises you would hope the administration wouldn't break, or would break, you would hope they would break the promise to see energy prices necessarily skyrocket. I would love to have seen that promise broken, yet that seems to be one of the very few that's been kept. energy prices have necessarily skyrocketed. And then we find out today, because hydraulic fracking has delivered the ability for this nation to become energy independent, today the EPA has declared war on hydraulic fracking. People are desperate. The rich, we've seen how this works. The President calls the wealthiest among us, the Wall Street folks, fat cats. All they have to endure is a little name-calling from the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, and in return they get richer than they've ever been. Most people can endure a little name-calling by an individual when they know the individual is going to see that they're wealthier than ever. Wall Street has done pretty well under this administration. It's done a lot better than most of America. Americans deserve better. The President says he's going after big oil, declaring war on big oil. Well, this is one of the few areas where the President actually does have a substantive plan to go after what he calls big oil. Well, we've learned from the way Wall Street's been handled, call them names but make them richer than ever, say you're going to war against big oil, and what happens? We get this proposal in writing from the President. This is his Jobs Act, and the subtitle D of the President's Jobs Act is entitled Repeal Oil Subsidies. Well, that word is extremely disingenuous. The President uses it all the time, but the word, if you look it up, means a grant or gift of money. There is no grant or gift of money. There are tax deductions for expenses. So he says he's going after big oil, but you look at the specific deductions that he now has in print that he is going after big oil with, and what do you find? You find out these deductions don't help big oil companies. It's so marginal, it's a drop to them. Who it will devastate and put out of business are the independent oil and gas operators who drill 95% of all the oil and gas wells in the continental U.S. There is a repeal in here by the President of the deduction for intangible drilling and developmental costs in the case of oil and gas wells. There is a repeal of the percentage depletion for oil and gas wells. There's repeal of the deduction for injectants. There's a repeal of oil and gas working interest exceptions to passive activity rules. Now, if anybody is interested in really finding out the truth, they can go to major oil companies and ask them, would these repeals of these deductions really hurt you as a major oil company in the world? And the answer would be, no, not really. You can go to the accountants, as I have, for independent oil and gas operators and say, if these are repealed, would it affect independent oil and gas operators who drill 95% of the oil wells in the continental U.S.? And the answer is, it will devastate them. Not only is he going after the deductions that keep them afloat, they're going after the investment in oil and gas wells by the mainstream public. Now, if you're British Petroleum or Exxon, you don't put out a proposal that says we're drilling a well, and here's the proposal, here's the geology, here's the other wells in the area, here's what we think it will do, and you invest X amount of dollars, and we will give you an X percentage amount of the working interest in this well. That's the kind of proposal independent oil and gas companies have to make to get investments for people to invest in their oil well. If they hit a gusher, hit a huge well, then those who invest and take a percentage of the well will do very well. They hit a dry hole, then they lose money. And when you invest in a dry hole and it costs you money, you would hope you'd be able to deduct your expenses of the investment that failed. What this president is doing not only is going to destroy the independent oil companies by taking away deductions that keep them afloat and keep them able to keep drilling another well, he's going after their investments. So once you begin to see these specifics, you realize, and there's some other things in here, repeal of marginal well production credit, repeal of enhanced oil recovery. There are a number that when you see the specifics, you realize, oh, wow, maybe he doesn't know that he will destroy oil and gas independent operators. Maybe he doesn't know. But it doesn't take a genius to realize if you put oil and gas operators out of business who are the independents, who are not big enough to have all the employees they need to do the drilling, who have so many subcontractors, who go out and eat and go to the entertainment places, and they go invest in things around town, and they go buy clothes. Those people, those subcontractors, their subcontractors, all of those people will be without anything to do because this administration says it declared war on major oil, but instead it's really a war against independents. Stop 95% of the drilling for oil and gas in the continental U.S., then what happens to major oil? You've eliminated all of their competition among the small independents. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's only a small number of massive international oil and gas companies comparatively, and you've wiped out their competition in America. It means they will charge more for gasoline, more for diesel, and there's nothing we can do about it because they're the only ones that have any energy. Right now, before this president finishes driving or trying to put independents out of business, we've got to stop this train wreck that's coming. This should be springtime in America. It should be a time of renaissance. People shouldn't have to pay $4 a gallon. And as soon as this president takes substantive actions, just to announce that he's going to take substantive actions, not to declare war on hydraulic fracking as they have now, not to declare war on oil companies in North Dakota, because there have been 8 mallards that died that had some oil on them, and therefore they have the Justice Department under the President's thumb who is prosecuting the oil companies for violation of the Migratory Bird Act, even though they've got windmills they support that are chopping them up by the thousands and thousands. No, don't go after the windmills. They're above. So when the President says he's for all of the above, that includes all of the wind being generated here in Washington and other places where there are windmills that are driven by the hot air. It's time to start saying what we mean so that when this President tells the leader of Israel, I have your back, the leader of Israel doesn't realize he's got to put on something that will stop a knife coming from the back. It's time for our allies to know we support our friends, and we're going to stop supporting and trying to buy off our enemies. It's time to bring peace and prosperity back to the continental U.S., all 50 states, all our territories, by truly having an all-of-the-above energy policy. And if we want to pursue renewables, don't be letting the Social Security Trust Fund or the tax money dry up and leave seniors so vulnerable. Don't take away $500 billion from Medicare and hurt the seniors like that, as Obamacare has done. Don't do those things. If you want to go spend billions giving it to your friends in solar energy, for heaven's sake, let's start leasing the federal land like it used to be done, and then use 25% royalty. Use part of our royalty to throw away on the President's friends, not be borrowing from China not be taxing people to give to his buddies, and we can return to springtime in America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
I would say to move that we do now hereby adjourn.
Okay. The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow for a morning hour debate.